In case you just joined us, my name is Beth Gerstein. I'm the Executive Director of AMOCA. I hope you've had a chance to see the Don Wright's Life is Not a Dress Rehearsal exhibition in Gallery B. Artists of Metlock are in the Wilson Gallery down in the lower level. And in the vault is Nicole Seisler holding patterns. Nicole is here with us today. Nicole, can you raise your hand in the back? There you go. I'm sure she'd be happy to chat with you about her exhibition. She will be giving a talk on October 9th, and I hope you'll join us again for that event. Before we start the gallery talk, I'd like to thank the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture and the Boardman Family Foundation for making this exhibition possible. It's also made possible by AMOCA's donors, members, and our board of directors, several of which are with us this evening. I'd like to take a moment to introduce Kirsten Wilders, who I think we introduced in the other, who's back there, but I don't think she was with us at that point, our artist in residence, and her residency is supported by the Wingate Foundation, Julianne and David Armstrong, and the Laguna Clay and Glaze Company. Kirsten will be with us until the end of April. This exhibition would also not be possible without the generous support from collectors who have lent pieces for the exhibition, including Egal and Diane Silver, who are here in the front row with us, David and Julie Armstrong, and Gail and Robert Brown, who donated pieces that we used in this exhibition. I'd also like to thank Alan Mandel and Rachel Mayeri, who loaned pieces for the exhibition. I'd also like to thank Nathan Stanfield, AMOCA's studio manager, Paul Roach, AMOCA's director of advancement and communication, Pam Aliaga, AMOCA's new exhibition manager, and David Armstrong's remarkable preparatory team, Israel and Oscar, for their work pulling this exhibition together. I'd like to thank Kayla Medina, who was our amazing 2021 Getty Murrow intern, who was my partner in crime this past summer and helped with all the exhibition planning and installation work. She was amazing and is an Otis student with Joan Takeyamogawa. Now on to this exhibition. I've had the pleasure to work with co-curator of this exhibition, Joe Loria, on a number of projects at AMOCA. Joe is a cultural treasure of Southern California, one of the most important advocates for the ceramic arts. In her former position as a curator of decorative arts at LACMA, she organized the seminal exhibition, Color and Fire, Defining Moments in Studio Ceramics from 1950 to 2000. Joe has worked on curatorial projects at AMOCA for more than a decade, including Common Ground, Ceramics in Southern California from 1945 to 1975, that was mounted in 2011. Honoring the Past, Embracing the Future, which was AMOCA's 10th anniversary exhibition in 2015, and Discovering SAR Ceramics in 2018, as well as Silver Splendor, the art of Anna Silver in 2019. I'm delighted to share that Joe and I have a number of collaborative and solo exhibitions coming up over the next few years. Stay tuned. We still like each other. Just a little. So since the 1950s, the San Francisco Bay Area has been a hotbed of ceramic experimentation and innovation. Abstract Expressionism, Bay Area figurative, and funk movements fueled an art scene in Northern California, making it a leading center of progressive art throughout the mid-20th century. The colleges and universities in Berkeley, San Francisco, Oakland, and Davis had students flocking to study with some of the greats: Robert Arneson, Karen Bresci, Viola Fry, Jim Melchert, Ron Nagel, Peter Volkus, as they created new and alternative ways to investigate the potential of ceramics. These artists had a significant influence on the next generation of Northern California artists, 5 of which are highlighted in this exhibition, and 4 of which are with us today. Joe and I led a curator walkthrough in August. A video's on our website if you missed it. So I'll end my remarks there, and I think that Joe is going to introduce each artist, and they're going to talk to you about their work. I'm talking to them.
Thank you, Beth. I just wanted to say to everybody, I know it's an effort on a Saturday to come out and go to a museum exhibition, so we are very thankful that you chose ours today. And will make it worth your while, because you get to hear from the artists, and that's the most important thing of any exhibition, of course, that has living artists. And what you don't learn today from the artists, you can listen to the interviews that are all accessible off of the website of this exhibition, Mind+Matter, and you can click on full interviews for all of the 5 artists. And unfortunately, Richard Shaw cannot be here today because, coincidentally, he has an opening tonight with his wife, Martha Shaw, at a local gallery up in San Francisco. So we are fortunate, though, to at least have 4 of the artists. And I just wanted to say that Mind+Matter is a title, as you know, every director, curator, anybody who works with art objects, titles are difficult. Sometimes you refer to the thesaurus, sometimes you ask friends or husbands, or you even talk to your dog and see if it responds. But Mind+Matter seemed to be perfect for this group of artists who are all masters. They've all got 30 to 40 to 50 years of working in clay, because throughout their careers they have kept central the idea of content. Their work is cerebral on many levels, but also accessible. And of course, matter refers to material, which refers to clay as being the best material on the earth and of the earth. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up, does it matter what order? Okay, why don't we start with Nancy Selvin, because her work is over here on this pedestal and over there. Come on, Nancy, you're not shy. Nancy teaches, so anybody who teaches knows how to grab a mic.
Yeah, but how am I going to hold on to it with my paper? I have to hold my...
Oh, you have to, here, I'll hold it for you.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to get my notes out. So
Okay, no problem.
I have a grid so I can put you each in a square, because I can't talk otherwise with you guys.
You have to, which one is this one? Yeah, you have to speak to the little one.
Oh, to the little one. Okay. Well, I thought I'd do something different. And thinking about giving talks and addressing my own work, I got to catch my breath. I'm sort of nervous.
We're a friendly crowd.
I know. I started looking back. I started looking back at old reviews and what people had said about my work in the past. And one of the things that struck me as I read some of my favorites was how much was relevant then is still relevant now and is still part of what Beth Ann and Joe and other people have written about my work. So I thought I'd go back and read one of these old reviews, because this is my favorite. It's the silliest, but it's one of my favorites. So it was from 1999, and it was an exhibition I had in Las Vegas, a solo exhibition I had at the Charleston Art Center in Las Vegas. And so, I don't know why I'm sort of out of breath. He says, so it's a guy named Scott Dickensheets, who's still there as an editor for a newspaper in Las Vegas. And he says, imagine for a moment you're a bowl. Oh, come on, loosen up. A standard cereal bowl. Or if you're feeling particularly good about yourself, a very nice gravy boat. You're solidly ceramic and functional. So this addresses the quote from me that's part of the interview that's in the videos over there. People put you to good use, and you like that. It's the best thing about being a bowl. In fact, come to think of it, that's pretty much the only thing about being a bowl. Ditto for your gravy boats. In fact, come to think of it, your very usefulness defines you utterly, eliminating every other potential. No one will ever think of you as more than a bowl, more than a very nice gravy boat. No one will ever behold you as an object of visual delight. No one will ever look at you and say to someone nearby, why, by golly, that bowl is a metaphor for the mystery inherent in everyday objects, as well as pretty sharp commentary on the practice of contemporary art and ceramics. In fact, come to think of it, being a bowl pretty much sucks. Ditto for your gravy boats. How much better, then, to be a ceramic art bowl from the hand and kiln of Berkeley, California artist Nancy Selvin. Her ceramic objects, which go on display Thursday at Charleston Heights and so forth, are purposely not utilitarian, at least not in the bowl and gravy bowl sense. And I just loved how that was part of our discussion about the work in this show, and so it's been a thread throughout my work forever. The bowls are irregular. Some have charred glaze inside on the surface that would contain the Wheaties. You can't imagine eating out of them. Her bottles and jugs don't hold water. When you make things functional, she says by phone from her mother-in-law's house in the Bay Area, you put tremendous limitations on them. So I never make things functional. She says this not with the brainy chill you might expect from someone who disdains mere usefulness on intellectual grounds, but rather with the earthy laughter of someone whose chosen material, for all its acutely arty ends, is really just fancy dirt. There are plenty of functional items out there, plenty of potters making bowls, she said, and I should say really beautiful and wonderful bowls. I don't need to make those kind of things. And so, in their impracticality, her out-of-the-ordinary objects, items you'd find in still lives, forms you'd find in paintings, she notes, take on a loftier significance, I hope. Consider the dual uselessness of one of Selvin's books. Being made of fired clay, it's clearly of no value as a book. Being shaped like a book, it defies the discipline's long history of concentrating largely on functional items. All that's left for this baby is to attempt intellectual stimulation. It is, in fact, urging you to ponder the possible difference between what something appears to be and what it actually is, reminding you, in other words, not to judge a book, etc. At the same time, it tries to invest these ideas in the stuff of everyday life. Sometimes Selvin adds patches of smeary text to the books, bottles, and other pieces, which is true here. The words approximate labels that tease away into unreadability. I like the pieces to have a little mystery, Selvin says. The labels add an element that there's an idea contained in the form, but it's not that legible. The words often have a quasi-private meaning. They come out of my own notebooks. It might be a notation for a glaze recipe or notes out of a piece of essay. I don't try to make them legible. Viewers don't need to get a crash course in ceramic history to get Selvin's work, she hopes, which is true. I just hope you can enjoy it for what it is. When someone looks at, say, a ceramic book, she's counting on an intimate personal connection. I hope they just think they're like journals or notebooks, something kind of personal they might have, like something you have sitting around. Similarly, groupings of her ceramic containers are meant to resonate with, oh, your medicine chest, items arranged according to an innate design sense. People compose their lives. They arrange things on their dressers. They arrange things on their shelves or their counters. Selvin, a longtime Northern Californian, and it talks about me a little bit, I'm going to skip that. The pieces are minimal. You don't have to make a leap. They don't tell you everything. That will put them at a certain aesthetic odds with their host city, as Las Vegas is wildly maximal. It tells you everything. It's relentlessly functional. It doesn't want you to question the difference between something's form and its use. Just pour money into it. Thank you.
So Nancy has two different groups of work here. One is the intentionally left blank grouping of vases against the charcoal wall, which is her political statement against all of the nonsense in language that happened with the previous administration. And she has also this platform of these wonderful large vessels that are done as an homage to abstract expressionist women painters. I said that without breathing. All right, so... Oh, right, and Nancy has two of the larger vases out on the platform and also drawings. We did try, when you go through the exhibition, to include 2D work as well as 3D work because all artists do drawings on some level. And we have a wonderful vitrine filled with sketchbooks and drawings from each of the artists. So I guess, Robert Brady, you are the next person whose work is able to be seen on this wall here, his language series, and over here, his masks. Can you hold this?
Can I focus?
No, can you hold it?
Oh,
I
hold
know
it,
you
yeah.
can focus. It's this one.
Oh, that one, okay. I forgot my notes. I left them in Berkeley.
I can help you out.
Gee, I don't even know where to start, really. I guess I'll just try to describe something about the work that I have here. I started out as an aspiring potter at the California College of Arts and Crafts in 1964, and for the remainder of that undergraduate work, I pretty much focused on making pottery and learning glaze technology and learning how to use the potter's wheel, of course, and hand building. And little by little, my work moved towards sculpture, and then I went to UC Davis, studied with Robert Arneson and, of course, all the other people there, and my work was focused on ceramic sculpture. In the late 80s, I quite accidentally stumbled on making a piece. I actually made a medicine chest for the house and out of wood, and fell in love with the material wood, and it just led me down a path that I allowed to happen, and I soon began to work with wood, and from that point on to this day, from I'm not sure what year that was, probably 88, 89, I've been working with wood primarily, making figurative work, but to some extent abstract work as well. In all that time, I have done a lot of ceramic pieces, but not really ambitious life-size ceramic figuration like I did prior to that. In this show, we have one example of a wood piece, and we have examples of more abstract pieces on the back wall, and on the other side of the wall, some more pieces, I think, that are unrelated to these. But these pieces I refer to as a language series, kind of for want of another, just, I don't know. You know, a lot of times we associate titles and reasons that we make things trying to satisfy the art public, and I don't know where I'm going here, but anyway, these things started out being influenced by and referencing kanji, or symbolic Japanese language, in its earliest forms, and as it became over the centuries, it became more and more abstracted, and so they're kind of simply structures that articulate space and voids, and I call them the language series. I'm sorry, I'm feeling really nervous and really hot. I don't know. This is not my day here, but what else? Let's see. I'd rather answer questions almost than talk about this. These mass series here, I've done, I don't know, probably 75, 80 of those pieces over the years. And it's something that I regress to or go back to every few years and make more and try to evolve them, change them, morph them in some way. But originally they came out of a simple assignment that I gave my students, and that was to take something from another culture, some evidence of art from another culture, and mix it with something from the present culture. And of course, this is a long time ago. And so to solve that for myself, I chose a 1957 Cadillac tail fin, and imagine that being sliced off of the body of a Cadillac and hung on the wall. So it was like a blade hanging out like that. And then I imbued it with these black and white lines that actually came from paintings that I did the year before, where I started with a central image and circumambulated that image over and over with line structures that varied in thickness and values, so that it created patterns. But I knew that when I did this, that they would be associated with oceanic work or some other primitive kind of culture. But that's what they began as, and then they just sort of took on a life of their own, away from that Cadillac tail fin. And that's often true, like with the language series too. The early ones were made almost primarily with square stock as opposed to the round tubes. I don't think there is one in here. Is there one?
There's two that are on the back wall that face Gary.
Oh, okay.
So when people drive by at night, they're lit up, and we use the psychedelic orange piece out there.
Okay. Well, I know that sometimes I'll start off with a notion that is embedded in a memory or a sighting or something historical that I'm referencing. And as I begin to work on it and develop a series, the original source begins to drop away, and I begin to react to the things that I'm making and where that takes me. So it changes in that way and is not necessarily adherent to that original source. So anyway, that's all I can say right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Also, Bob has drawings and a drawing here, 2, 3. And just because he didn't say this, I will say this for him. He has been circling back lately and is starting to make pottery again, because he has said in his interviews that there's nothing more beautiful than a perfect bowl. Just to be the bookend with what Nancy read. So speaking of bookends, I would like to invite Beverly Mayeri up as being another person who has a long history of working with certain motifs, as Bob has. So Beverly, would you like to come up and speak about your work? We always have to have the first person. Do you want me to hold it for you?
No, I think
Okay,
I'm
all
okay.
right.
Hi. Do you hear me?
You have to speak to the lower one.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. Well, I'm a working artist and not a speaker, so usually I'm silent when I'm in the studio. But I thought I would just mention how I work with some of the pieces that are here. So when you go around, you'll see a piece called Clear Cut, and that came from a very specific situation. I think it was in the late 90s when an environmentalist, Deborah Butterfly, I think was her name, went up a tree and stayed there for a year to protest the clear cutting of those great redwood trees. And of course, they didn't cut that one down because she was up there. And now they don't do the clear cutting the way they used to. So I wanted to do a piece about that. And with clear cut, it just came to me suddenly when somebody said when the forest lumberman cut something down, it's a clear cut on the throat of the tree, and then it goes over. And so then I knew I could do the throat of a tree going over, and that's what I have there. So I have environmentalists in the bark and some little animals and water and products of the tree. And water, of course, comes from the breathing of the tree takes in CO2 and gives out oxygen and water. So, I mean, we really want our trees. And so anyway, that was a piece. I had to wait for the idea to come to me. I can't really think it through very rationally. It comes to me just suddenly. And then I know I've got a piece that I want to do. Now, the runner down there, I wanted to do somebody who showed some speed in running. And so I thought of cutting him up and then making it jagged. So each layer was completely cut off and then replaced out of alignment to have him run. And originally that piece was a full man with the legs. And for some reason, the way the legs went with him running, and I went to somebody and got rebar in there and a metal base, and it looked static. So I cut him up. I cut it up and left him at the hips, and he looks like he's trying to struggle through something and trying to get somewhere. Let's see, there's a small little face over there that has a lot of other faces in it, carved in it. I've done a number of these of different sizes, because I just love to do faces. So I thought, well, one face isn't enough. I'm just going to see how many faces I can crowd into this mask. And so I had a lot of fun seeing how the face would fit over the nose and the ears and the eyes, and making a little landscape out of it. There's a piece there, Vanishing Species Western Front. That's a very large head, and that I really felt like dedicating a piece to the endangered species, that we are causing their demise. And so I looked it up on the Fish and Game Wildlife Service, and to see what species were in trouble, and I carved them on that big head. That may end up being like a memorial to them. I hope not. We have to mend our ways. Anyway, so each piece has a different idea that usually I'll think of some idea I want to do, like memory to some friends or my family or something. And then I just wait for an image to come into my head, and if it intrigues me, I'll make a doodle of it. And that's where these little pads come in handy. All artists have them for jotting down their ideas. So anyway, that's pretty much how I work.
Thank you, Beverly, and I didn't want to trip you on the way out. Arthur, you are our final guest, but not, of course, the last but least, because for one thing, you are the youngest of all of the artists here.
I tried really hard at that.
Yeah, you're doing a good job. Arthur teaches at California College of the Arts, as well as Nancy does. So I thought since Nancy started, Arthur can end.
That's what I go, yeah.
So you can talk about all of your work. And Arthur has, well, not all of it, but, in general.
Got it, yeah.
And Arthur has pieces on, on the other side of the wall, and also in vitrines.
Thank you.
The smaller one.
The smaller one, right. I want to first thank Beth and Joe for having me be part of the 5 here. It's like, not generally speaking, but I know all the other 4, and I'm a fan of all the other 4 too as well. So I always love to be in a show where I like the other art. So it's a real perk, I'll tell you. And I also like the fact that Bob Brady is in this show, because I haven't shown with Bob for years and years, but I've known him the longest. And so I think the thing is, in terms of the material that we're using, clay, I started out as a painter, and that's when I met Bob. And the thing is that I was having difficulty in my pursuit of trying to find something interesting to do in painting. And I actually saw Bob Brady, before I even introduced myself to him, we started having a dialogue, and he was photographing a small piece of his, and he turns to me and he goes, "What, do you know anything about f-stops?" and I did, because I was a photorealist, so I knew about the camera stuff. And so we started our conversation with f-stops. And the thing about that is that when I saw him and also Peter Vandenberg, who was also teaching there, what they were doing with clay, I thought, that clay thing clay can be a good substitute for canvas. So I was still thinking in terms of a painter. And so the reason why I'm also bringing that story up is because when you're seeing my work, the majority of my work is often on the wall. And the reason why is because I'm still thinking like a painter. I still think in terms of the figure-ground relationship. What is the implication of the narrative when you're looking at the work? And by implication of a narrative, I mean that I don't necessarily have an absolute story to them. But and these pieces that you're seeing, and also that one on the other side saying that's called Dialogues of My Abyss, those are brand new compositions at the time I made them. I never made any piece that had that kind of structure to them. And so I'm a studier of composition in reality, and also personal symbolism. But my personal symbols are not something that can be understood by everybody, or I should say, oh, don't you know my personal symbols? That kind of thing. It's not something, or don't you know my narrative? Don't you know my story? So those are the things that are ridiculous for somebody to, hopefully, they get it. I mean, if your work is so narrative that people understand it right away, then your work is pretty illustrative. It's a story. It's illustration to a story. So I'm kind of not that kind of artist. So the thing is that what I'm interested in is I'm interested in how the eye travels once it's on the wall, and it answers the question of how do I make a sculpture that kind of floats so that it's not ground, so it's not understood as something that's weight influenced. If you can eliminate that, then you can go into the implication of story. And the best way is put it on the wall, Also, it has control. You don't have to walk around it. When you walk around a piece, to me, I would make pieces in the round, and when you walked around it, it's like when they were behind the piece, it's like, that's not where you should be looking. It's the front that counts, right? And so in order for it to stay in power, so to speak, I put it on the wall. So there's the reasons why they're on the wall. But basically, it's because I still think like a painter. So also the one thing, too, is that they're not stories per se, but I'm more of a studier of the nature of story. In other words, when you're looking at this piece right here and your eye travels over here, where does your eye go next? And what happens when that happens? And so as a consequence, narrative, you're spending more time with the piece, first of all. And as it happens, hopefully you're experiencing more and more with the work. And so I realized that by making work more interesting on a compositional level, it lengthens the read, and more things can happen. So in terms of the work that I have in the show, that piece is called Acid Rain. It's like one of the oldest pieces in the show. I made that in 1988, and it was right when all this talk about acid rain and the ozone layer and all that kind of stuff. So in my mind, I was thinking about raining acid, and so that simple idea created that piece. But I always liked that piece, and it's in my personal collection. And I also wanted to always revisit the idea of doubles, two people together. I did that. I did it off and on here and there, revisit it for one piece and then came back and did one more. And now I'm kind of like, in the last bit of time, I'm doing a lot of doubles. And the ironic story about that is that there's two pieces that are together on a pedestal over there. And those were originally singular pieces. They were both going to be in the show on their own pedestal in their own right as one piece.
The fifth realm and the...
Yes, it's called the Fifth Realm and the High Noon. And the Fifth Realm and the High Noon, Fifth Realm at Midnight. And they were definitely individual pieces made at different times. And when I was preparing for the show, I wanted to know, I said, instead of me having to make pedestals, I call Beth and I said, well, Beth, I need a pedestal about so high. And she goes, well, how many do you need? I said, well, do you have two? And then when I was on the phone, I thought, well, hold on. And so I kind of measured. I wanted to make sure about the height and whether they should be what would be the same height for both. And so I put both on the same kind of pedestal I had in my studio. And I realized, well, that is a good height. And then I'm looking at them, I'm going, they work well together. They're sharing the same pedestal. And what I like about them is that they're kind of like back to back, and they kind of are fighting for the space. There's not enough room for both of them. and I love that. It's like fighting sisters or something, you know. And they're both different kinds of clay. You know, they're just so different, but there's a relationship. And I told, I said when I came in, I said, you know, and I looked at it in the reel. I said, you know, that's the piece now. They're now not two individual pieces, they're one. And so that happens a lot in my studio when I'm thinking, there's something that needs to happen that I don't know yet. I don't know, it needs something, it's not leaving the studio yet. And so that's another example. Yeah. And then lastly, I want to talk about that one piece, the head, there's one piece I had made literally in 1982 in Louisiana, and it was a sleeper piece. And I always liked that head, but I never thought it was ready to be seen. And it was in my studio for a long time, and then it was out in the garden, and then it was in the mud. I almost ran over it a few times. And then I would come back and I would revisit it, and I kind of would add something to it. And I added this piece of glass, blown glass coming out of the head. I'm going, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then it goes back into the garden. And so I would bring it out and wash it off and think about it. And then I put that second head on it that needed something else too. So I brought them together. Again, these objects that didn't have a completion completed itself. They completed itself. And so then it becomes about, all of a sudden it becomes awake, somebody who's asleep and somebody who wakes. And so if you see that piece, look around the side, and it's like, it's finally a 360 piece, you know. So talking about coming full circle. I'm actually making sculpture now, so I'm really kind of happy about that. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. I'm auditioning for the wedding singer next. We just wanted to give you a few words to Richard Shaw's work, since he can't be here with us today, but Richard is an acclaimed master of working in porcelain and underglazes and overglaze decals. You can see his work here, and maybe the best example close by is the painter's table with the leaning frame. Everything that you see in a Richard Shaw work is entirely made out of clay.
Except for the glass.
Except for, oh, right, the glass that he's probably drinking turpentine out of. Anyway, that he has made these pieces through the Trompe l'oeil idea of copying something that looks like it's real, but it really isn't. And I thought that what he did was take a piece, like let's say a book or a plate, and just take that, not just, but make a mold out of it, and then pour his porcelain slip into it. But in the interview, this is why I'll encourage you to watch them if you have time, he actually says that wouldn't work because he makes the decals on a 1-to-1 scale level. So he explains that if he wants to make a pack of Marlboro cigarettes, and he, shoots the cover of it, so he gets a digital photograph and then makes that digital photograph into a ceramic decal. If he were just to mold a cigarette pack, the decal wouldn't fit because porcelain shrinks about 20%. So he actually goes through the other step of carving whatever he wants to make in wood. And then he makes a mold of the wood piece. So a pack of cigarettes he would carve in wood, and then he'd make the mold of the cigarette box. of the cigarette pack. So I was just blown away, thinking, who has this much time? And he's been doing this for years. It's a very labor-intensive process, and I know that he loves it, but I really love his sense of humor too. If you go through and you really look at what the titles of his book, like one of them is like the history of crustaceans. He has to come up with all of these ideas. So please take a look at Richard Shaw's work closely, not too closely, and enjoy it for its masterful trompe l'oeil illusionistic aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to the artists who joined us today from up north. Membership is really an important thing for us, and we hope that those of you who are not members, you'll think about joining because it supports exhibitions and programs like this. And you can get more information at the front desk, or you can go online. And thank you for joining us this evening, and enjoy the rest of your visit.